Hey everyone, welcome back to Malaysia in Focus, your deep dive into the social, political, and cultural stories shaping Malaysia today. Because behind the headlines of Malaysia's latest state elections lies a 160-year-old historical accident that secretly dictates how every Malaysian votes today.
It really does.
Mhm.
It's something most people don't even realize when they head to the polls.
Right. So today, our mission is to unpack this fascinating interview featuring political scientist Dr. Wong Chun-Huat. We're going to look way past the surface level election results in places like Negeri Sembilan and Malacca.
Yeah, we have to look past the surface to understand the deep structural and, well, historical forces that make our politics so incredibly polarized right now.
Exactly. And we're also going to explore a potential mathematical solution that could actually fix it.
Which is the part I'm most excited about, honestly.
Me too. But let's start with the immediate reality on the ground, right? The recent state elections. Because Negeri Sembilan offers this perfect lens into the fracture we're dealing with.
It really does. The data coming out of there is just, it's striking.
It is. I mean, you look at the non-Malay vote, and it overwhelmingly stuck with the DAP, the Democratic Action Party. We're talking about hitting over 70% in areas like Rahang and Mamboy.
Over 70%.
Yeah, but then, meanwhile, the Malay vote saw this massive shift toward the Green Wave, meaning the Perikah National Coalition, or PN.
Yeah, and that geographic split, it's really the foundational reality of our current political landscape.
Because 70% is a huge margin.
Exactly. When you look at a margin like 70% in a parliamentary democracy, you're not looking at a competitive district anymore. You are looking at complete demographic saturation.
Meaning there's basically no one left to convince.
Right. The DAP has effectively maximized its voter base in those areas. There are almost no remaining non-Malay or progressive voters left to persuade.
Wow.
But the inverse of that is actually what doomed their coalition partners, Pakatan Harapan or PH, in other districts.
Oh, because they couldn't get the crossover votes?
Exactly. When PH lost seats, it wasn't because of some, minor swing in independent voters. It was a complete failure to attract any meaningful crossover votes from the Malay demographic.
Which they needed to offset the heavy mobilization by PN.
You got it.
So if I live in Mambo, my neighborhood is experiencing a completely different political weather system than a neighborhood just a few miles down the road.
Literally a different reality.
And that brings us to the upcoming logistical nightmare in Malacca.
Oh, Malacca. Yeah, that is going to be incredibly messy.
Because the coalitions are trying to figure out how to divide up the seats to contest the next election.
Right, but the ground is shifting so fast that the data they use changes the entire power dynamic at the negotiating table.
Okay, break that down for us. Why is the data such a problem?
Well, the entire negotiation depends on which historical data set a party chooses to weaponize. So if you allocate seats based on the 2021 state election results.
Okay, 2021.
Yeah, if you use 2021, Barisan Nasional, BN, is the undisputed heavyweight. They achieved a two-thirds majority in that election.
They totally dominated the state apparatus.
Exactly. So by that logic, BN should dictate the terms, pick the chief minister candidate, and contest the lion's share of the 28 state seats.
But 2021 is basically ancient history now, right? Because we had a massive influx of new voters.
Right, the system completely changed.
So if I'm negotiating for PN, I'm definitely not using 2021. I'm sliding the 2022 general election data across the table.
And that 2022 data set completely upends the hierarchy.
Because of Undi 18.
Exactly. The 2022 elections included the implementation of Undi 18, lowering the voting age from 21 to 18, plus automatic voter registration.
Which injected what? Millions of new voters?
Millions. Mostly younger voters, which profoundly alter the demographics of individual constituencies.
So what happens when you apply those 2022 numbers to Malacca?
If you overlay the 2022 parliamentary voting patterns onto Malacca's 28 state seats, BN's dominance just collapses.
Wow.
Based on the 2022 numbers, Pakatan Harapan would secure 14 seats, Perikatan Nasional would capture 10, and Barisan Nasional would plummet to a mere 4 seats.
Wait, 4 seats. They go from a two-thirds supermajority to just 4 seats.
In just 12 months, it's a staggering drop.
That makes them an irrelevant third-party placeholder. No wonder the negotiations are tense.
Right. It creates this unresolvable tension. Statistical momentum heavily favors PN.
So mathematically, PN should be the lead actor.
They should. If you project 2022 forward, PN should rightfully lead the alliance against PH, contesting maybe 16 seats and leaving BN with 12.
But BN is the incumbent. They hold the state government right now.
Exactly. They control the machinery, the patronage, the executive power.
And nobody just hands over executive power because a spreadsheet tells them to.
No political party voluntarily relinquishes power based on a statistical model. Never.
It sounds to me, wait, so PN and BN are basically like two brothers who hate each other, but like same girl.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
They have to work together just to fight their common rival, Pakatan Harapan. But they want to sabotage each other at the same time.
Right, or it's like two rival corporate departments forced into a merger. But their bonuses depend on ruining each other's quarterly reports.
Wow.
For BN to survive in Malacca, they actually need PN to tell its own grassroots supporters to stand down in winnable areas.
Which is a huge ask. PN has to convince its base to sacrifice a local victory for the coalition.
It requires massive political capital.
So why would PN ever agree to that? Why not just crush BN and take the seats they mathematically deserve?
Because the ultimate prize in Malaysian politics isn't the chief minister's office in Malacca.
It's Putraya.
Exactly. It's the prime minister's office. Capturing federal power dictates everything.
So PN might calculate that sacrificing Malacca is the cost of doing business to get BN's help at the federal level.
We've seen this before. In Johor, parties accepted way fewer seats than they deserved just to appease the broader federal strategy.
But suppressing local ambition for federal strategy, that has to create intense internal friction, right?
Oh, it boils over eventually. Always.
And that friction isn't just a PNBN problem. The DAP is facing a massive internal crisis of their own right now within the federal unity government.
Yes, the August 16th dilemma.
Right. They have 4,000 delegates voting on August 16th, and they have to navigate this crazy constitutional trap.
The DAP is really experiencing the harsh reality of going from a vocal opposition party to being part of the ruling establishment.
It's a tough transition. What exactly is the trap they're caught in?
It revolves around this Westminster parliamentary concept called collective cabinet responsibility.
Okay, how does that work?
The rules dictate that the cabinet has to act with a unified public front.
Meaning no public disagreements.
None. Once a policy is debated and decided behind closed doors in the cabinet room, every single minister is bound to support it publicly.
Even if they personally hate it?
Even if they hate it, and even if it goes against their party's historical ideology.
Okay, so if this breakdown is helping you see the real chess game behind Malaysian politics, hit like and subscribe so you'll always stay one step ahead on the biggest stories. We really rely on you guys to keep producing these deep dives.
Yeah, the chess game is complex. It's like being in a three-legged race.
A three-legged race.
Yeah, you're tied to the other ministers.
Oh, I see. So even if you want to run toward, say, progressive reform, and the minister tied to you wants to run toward conservative nationalism.
You both have to step in unison, which usually means moving at a painfully slow compromise shuffle.
And if you speak out against the direction you're going, you fall over and break the government.
Exactly.
Oh.
A DIP minister cannot stand at a podium and criticize a controversial policy introduced by a UMNO minister in the same government.
They can't publicly champion the aggressive anti-corruption reforms their base demands if the cabinet says no.
They are bound by protocol to defend the collective decision, or at the very least, just stay silent.
Which is basically political suicide for the DAB. I mean, their entire brand for decades was built on being the fearless voice calling out corruption.
Right, demanding institutional reform.
And now the grassroots voters who stood in the rain to vote for them are watching their representatives sit in cabinet, smiling and nodding with the same politicians they protested against.
The disillusionment at the grassroots level is profound. That's what the delegates voting on August 16th have to weigh.
Should they stay in the unity government or leave?
Right. If they stay, they accept that straitjacket of collective responsibility.
Risking massive voter apathy in the next election.
Because their base will think they've just been absorbed by the establishment.
But what if they leave? What if they pull their ministers out of the cabinet but still supply confidence and supply from the backbenches?
Well, moving to the backbenches doesn't happen in a vacuum. If the DAP suddenly withdraws its ministers, the optics of stability vanish instantly.
It would look like the government is collapsing.
It would trigger a catastrophic domino effect. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's cabinet would lose crucial ministers overnight.
Which would cause a panic.
Total panic.
Yeah.
Other coalition partners, especially UMNO, would reassess their positions.
And if UMNO pulls out to save themselves,
The Anwar government falls.
and if the government falls, it opens the door for the Islamic Party, PAS, and PN to take federal power.
Which is the absolute worst-case scenario for the DAP's progressive base.
So it's an impossible paradox. To save their identity, they bring down the government. To save the government, they sacrifice their identity.
The delegates are essentially choosing the lesser of two severe institutional casualties.
Wow. Okay, so if everyone is so unhappy with these compromises, why is it so hard to find a middle ground in Malaysia?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because in other democracies, when things get messy, politicians just retreat to the moderate middle, right? Where most of the reasonable voters are.
Right, but to understand why that doesn't work here, we have to completely discard the traditional Western framework of the political spectrum.
Okay, so forget the textbook left versus right.
Exactly. In the US or the UK, left and right are defined by class and economics.
Labor versus capital.
Right. The left wants higher taxes and social safety nets. The right wants free market capitalism and deregulation.
But in Malaysia, the axis isn't drawn along class lines at all?
No, it's drawn along racial and religious lines.
Rough so.
The fundamental dividing line is about the role of the state regarding ethnic protection versus multicultural meritocracy.
Ah.
On one end, you have the belief that the government must actively intervene to protect the special status and economic interests of the Malay Muslim majority. Ketuan Malaya.
And on the other end?
The demand for a secular multicultural state where government policies are colorblind in the economy is pure meritocracy.
So state intervention here isn't about lifting up the working class. It's about enforcing Bumiputera quotas in universities and corporate equity.
Exactly. And deregulation isn't Reaganomics. It's dismantling race-based privileges.
That is a completely different landscape.
It creates a unique socio-political topography. Dr. Wong Chin Quat visualizes this using the concept of the M-shaped society.
Okay, picture the normal bell curve for a second.
Right. In a highly cohesive society, most voters cluster in the fat middle of the bell curve.
The moderate center. And the extreme fringes taper off on the sides.
That mathematically incentivizes politicians to rush to the center to win elections.
But Malaysia doesn't have one bell curve.
No, because the core desires of the Malay electorate and the non-Malay electorate are structurally opposed, society forms a bimodal distribution,
Two overlapping bell curves.
creating the shape of an M.
Which means the space between the peaks isn't a mountain of moderate voters.
It's a deep valley where no one wants to be.
a demographic dead zone.
If a politician tries to stand in that middle valley and offer compromises, they don't win over moderates, they alienate both peaks.
Because to the Malay base on one peak, the politician looks too liberal, like they're dismantling protections.
And to the non-Malay base, on the other peak, they look hopelessly compromised, perpetuating systemic inequality.
So the gravity of the M shape constantly pulls politicians away from the center.
To survive, they have to climb the peak of their respective demographic. They have to use hardline rhetoric, because that's where the safe votes are.
It's mathematically perilous to be a moderate. The center is a trap.
It really is.
But wait, why is our identity so rigidly tied to religion in the first place? I mean, surely it hasn't always been this way.
It hasn't. The fusion of race and religion in Malaysia is actually the direct result of a highly specific crisis in colonial administration.
A historical accident.
Yes. To understand the legal definitions defining our upcoming 2026 state elections, we have to go back to a logistical failure by the British Empire in India.
In 1857.
Exactly.
The Sepoy Mutiny. I mean, how does a colonial conflict in India rewire the constitution of Malaya?
It all comes down to the trauma the British experienced. Before 1857, the British East India Company was basically an armed corporation ruling India.
With a military made up of local Indian soldiers, the Sepoys.
Right. And in 1857, the company introduced this new pattern, 1853 Enfield rifled musket.
And to load those muskets, the soldier had to bite open a pre-greased paper cartridge.
That grease was the flashpoint. Rumors spread that the grease was made from a mixture of beef tallow and pork lard.
Which is a catastrophic oversight.
Truly. Biting the cartridge meant oral contact. For Hindu sepoys, consuming beef was a profound religious violation.
And for Muslim sepoys, contact with pork was strictly haram.
The British essentially forced their soldiers to choose between obeying orders and committing a severe religious transgression.
The cultural insensitivity is it's staggering.
And the response was explosive. The sepoys mutinied.
Yeah.
It turned into a massive, brutal conflict that lasted over a year.
The British lost a lot of people, the East India Company was dissolved.
And the British Crown had to take direct control of India. The cost of suppressing a religious uprising terrified them.
So when the British started expanding down the Malay Peninsula a few decades later, they were completely paranoid about local religious customs.
The lesson from 1857 was absolute. Do not interfere with local religion.
Because it sparks unwinnable wars.
Exactly. So they established a system of indirect rule, starting with the Pancourt Treaty of 1874.
Right, a British resident would advise the Sultan on administration and taxation. They wanted the tin and rubber without managing the people.
And the treaties explicitly stated that the Sultan must act on British advice on all matters except,
Except those concerning Malay custom and the Islamic religion.
yes, the British deliberately carved out this isolated sphere of authority to keep the local elite pacified.
So they wouldn't trigger another 1857. But by isolating Islam and Malay custom as the only indigenous power left, they changed the nature of that power.
Dramatically. Before the British, the Sultan's power was territory, river tolls, military strength.
But the British took all that away.
So for the Malay royal and bureaucratic elites to maintain any influence, they had to aggressively expand their authority over the only domain they had left.
Religion and custom.
They institutionalized Islamic administration. They formalized Malay customs. The survival of the elite depended on intertwining Malayness with Islam.
It was literally a survival mechanism for the bureaucracy.
If they let Malay identity be fluid, they would lose their exclusive jurisdiction over the population.
And we fast forward to 1957, the drafting of the Malaysian Constitution, and this survival tactic is locked into Article 160.
Legally defining a Malay as a person who professes the religion of Islam, habitually speaks the Malay language, and conforms to Malo custom.
So a bureaucratic reaction to animal fat on rifle cartridges in India ultimately codified the racial and religious boundaries of modern Malaysia.
History enforces the parameters of what is politically possible today. The M-shaped society was engineered by colonial policy.
That is wild, but historical identity alone usually isn't enough to sustain these rigid voting blocks forever.
No, it needs fuel.
Right. There must be an underlying economic engine driving this polarization today.
And there is. We can't ignore material realities. The idea of a pure, free market meritocracy sounds great if you already have capital, professional networks, and premium education.
Because then meritocracy is just an open door to success.
But if your community historically lacks those advantages, a pure meritocracy feels like a threat.
It feels like an execution, honestly.
So state intervention and protective policies become essential survival mechanisms.
Like the new economic policy, the NEP, which started in 1971.
Right. Institutionalizing affirmative action for the Bumiputera. Quotas in universities, corporate equity, government procurement.
And when politicians try to dismantle these race-based policies, they trigger an existential panic.
Even among ordinary working-class Malays who don't personally benefit from massive corporate equity quotas.
Why is that? Why defend a policy that doesn't actually put money in your pocket?
Dr. Wong uses two brilliant analogies to explain this: the lottery and the priority lane.
Let's start with the lottery.
When we talk about multi-million ringgit government contracts given to Bumiputera firms, that's wealth at the very top.
The average rural voter is never going to bid on a highway contract. The direct benefit to them is zero.
Yet they vote to protect it. Why? Because it's a lottery ticket.
It represents hope.
Exactly. It signals that the state is engineering pathways to wealth for their demographic. Even if their chances of winning are microscopic, taking away the policy means confiscating the lottery ticket.
You're destroying the architecture of hope.
The perceived loss of potential wealth hurts just as much as losing actual wealth.
And the second analogy, the priority lane, explains the daily benefits.
Right. While contracts are the lottery, the priority lane is about housing discounts.
Bumiputera buyers get a mandatory discount on new properties, usually around 5 to 7%.
Which is huge.
If a middle-class family is buying a 500,000 ringgit apartment, a 7% discount is 35,000 ringgit.
That's the difference between affording the down payment or not.
It's a massive tangible advantage.
It acts exactly like a priority boarding lane at an airport. You're still in economy class, but the Bumiputera status lets you board slightly earlier than everyone else.
And if you have a VIP card that helps your family survive harsh economic times, you will fight anyone who tries to take it away.
Exactly. If you lecture a voter about the evils of institutional racism while they're relying on that priority lane, your argument will fail.
Because they see your moral lecture as a direct threat to their family's security.
Moralizing is a spectacularly ineffective political strategy.
So how do you actually bridge the divide?
You have to prove, through material results, that diversity is more profitable than segregation. Actionable multiculturalism.
Like what's happening in the Chinese vernacular schools, the SJKC.
Yes, this is a critical phenomenon. Historically, Malay nationalists targeted these schools, saying they fracture national unity.
But the reality on the ground is completely different. Currently, about 20% of SJKC students are non-Chinese, mostly Malay.
Why are Malay parents opting out of national schools to send their kids to an environment historically framed as alien?
Because parents are pragmatic, they want the best return on investment for their kids.
They see the rigorous academic discipline in SJKC, the high performance in math and science.
And the Mandarin fluency.
Crucially, yes. Mandarin is a global economic asset now.
It opens up trade networks, jobs in multinational corporations.
These parents aren't making a progressive statement about multiculturalism. They're giving their kids a competitive edge.
But by acting in their own self-interest, they're organically integrating the classroom. Kids of different ethnicities are learning together, playing together.
That is how the rigid peaks of the M shape begin to erode. Shared economic utility.
But if people are willing to integrate when the incentives align, why does our electoral system force us back into polarized camps every 5 years?
Because the machinery itself is the barrier. The system punishes nuance and rewards polarization.
We're talking about the first past-the-post voting system, FPTP.
The inheritance from the British parliamentary model. It mathematically traps politics in a racial binary.
Okay, let's explain FPTP. The country is divided into geographic districts.
And the candidate with the highest number of votes in that district wins the seat outright.
You don't need 51%, just a plurality. One more vote than the second-place candidate.
It's a winner-takes-all mechanism, which leads to the wasted vote phenomenon.
Imagine a Green Party or a Labor Party. Let's say they have 15% support nationwide.
Because they only get 15% locally, they come in third or fourth everywhere.
So they can have millions of voters and get 0 seats in parliament.
FPTP mathematically eradicates minority voices that are geographically dispersed.
Which kills off small ideological parties like PSM, the Socialist Party, or MUDA.
They get wiped out.
Voters realize that voting for them is throwing their vote away. Or worse, splitting the vote and helping their rival win.
The spoiler effect.
So voters are forced into massive coalitions.
That's like an economic monopoly.
Right. The supermarket analogy. The voting system forces us to shop at only 2 massive hypermarkets, Pakatan Harapan and Perapatan National.
And because they're terrified of losing market share, both hypermarkets cater to the largest demographic peak.
They stop carrying specialty items and only stock conservative majoritarian brands.
We need boutique stores that sell specialized policies, but FPTP bulldozes them before they open.
So how do we break the monopoly?
We change the mathematical rules. We introduce proportional representation, or PR.
But wait, doesn't PR fracture the government? You end up with a dozen tiny parties and governments collapsing every 6 months.
That's a valid fear, which is why modern PR systems use thresholds. The model often cited is the mixed-member proportional system, like in Taiwan.
Or non-constituency seats.
Exactly. You keep the local districts decided by FPTP for geographic representation.
But you add a second tier of seats based purely on the total popular vote.
Say an additional 30% of the total seats. Let's walk through the math.
Okay, imagine a state assembly has 50 seats decided by FPTP. We add 20 new proportional seats, making it 70.
Bring back our Labor Party, PSM. They get 10% of the popular vote statewide, but win 0 local districts.
Under the new PR system, they apply that 10% to the 20 new seats. 10% of 20 is 2 seats.
They get 2 seats in the assembly. 1 million voters are no longer disenfranchised.
And the threshold prevents extreme fragmentation.
Right. You need maybe 4 or 5% of the vote to qualify, keeping micro-parties out.
This completely rewires political organizing.
If you only need 5% statewide to get a seat, you don't have to define your identity by race or religion anymore.
You can build a coalition on class, environment, urban infrastructure.
It shatters the M shape by opening up a second and third dimension in politics.
And it liberates major parties from their own extremists.
Yes. Right now, Malay parties are terrified of their hard-right flank. Under PR, if the hard-right splinters off, they take their 10%, but the major party can finally campaign in the moderate center without fear.
It's a pressure valve. But waiting for politicians to change the rules that keep them in power feels a bit naive. What can everyday citizens do?
You have to claim agency outside the ballot box. Reforming the system means understanding the permanent machinery, the civil service, and the economy.
The sources mentioned a workshop by Project Sama with a former official, Nick F., training citizens to engage the civil service.
Politicians come and go, but the bureaucracy is permanent. The people writing zoning laws and municipal budgets are career civil servants.
Yelling at a minister on social media won't stop a highway. You need to know how to draft a formal objection.
Institutional literacy. It lets citizens exert pressure continuously.
And the second avenue is economic resilience, like the YYC workshops for traditional small and medium enterprises.
Helping a family hardware store transition to digital inventory or finding new export markets.
Because when businesses adapt, they stabilize the middle class.
And a resilient middle class is highly resistant to ethnic panic. Economic stability breeds pragmatism.
Building administrative leverage and economic independence. It's a multi-generational project.
It really is.
Thanks for watching. Join thousands of Malaysians who want clarity, not confusion. Tap like, hit subscribe, and let's keep making sense of this together.
And as we consider these massive challenges, I just want you to reflect on the sheer contingency of our reality.
The historical butterfly effect.
Exactly. Think about the logistics of the British East India Company in 1857.
Right.
If a single British quartermaster had just been slightly more culturally literate and sourced vegetable oil instead of animal fat for those rifles,
the Sepoy Mutiny might never have happened.
the colonial strategy in Malaya would have been completely different. The legal definition of Malay identity, the M-shaped society, the very structure of our 2026 elections.
It might all be unrecognizable today. History isn't just dates in a textbook, it's the architecture you walk into every time you enter a voting booth. We'll see you next time.